Welcome back, everybody. Episode 3 of the Mile You're In podcast. And today we're talking about the Long Haul 100. I don't even know where to really start other than just going from the beginning to the end in the best way that I can, because to be honest, there's just so much that happened last weekend. So many awesome, in good and bad way, experiences that I'm just going to do the best that I can and tell you in a visually appealing way what happened. I got there Friday night, camped out at the main hub area. Pretty cool experience. I've never done that before. The weather was really nice, though at times I would wake up in the middle of the night because it was cold. But then I'd look up and my tent was sweating. I'm assuming my breathing or body temperature, the humidity was causing that. I don't know, but it was like a funny mental game that was being played with me where I'm freezing, but I'm seeing the tent sweating. And it wasn't raining, so I know it wasn't that. So I got there the night before, camped out. I overslept purposely. Originally, I had the alarm set for 2 hours before, but I ended up snoozing it because I figured I'm right here. How much time do I really need? Bad idea, because I woke up, my headlamps weren't working, so I was struggling with that, which caused me to forget to use my PR lotion, my sport shield. To be honest, I didn't even put on deodorant. Thank God it was going to be a smelly event anyways. I even at one point was about to get on the vehicle to be transported to the start line to look down and realize I wasn't even wearing my bib. I hadn't even put my bib on yet. Like I was in a rush. So that's another lesson learned, to stick to what works and get up extra early so you can relax and do everything you need to do, especially if something goes wrong that you didn't expect to go wrong. So we get to the start line. It was fairly cold for me, at least. So I had on my beanie, my gloves, my arm warmers, but everything else was, the singlet, the shorts, that was it. I just needed to keep the main areas that I feel I get cold in easily. I just needed to keep those areas warm, and I felt like I'd be okay, which I was. So, it's 10 mile loops. The first loop is 11 miles. So we start the race, and I ran the first 2 miles with my buddy Jared, a good friend of mine. So it was fun to run with him and joke around with my buddy Lucian. It was just, it was nice because it allowed me to pace myself, the excitement and everything that I have built in, anxiety, excitement, butterflies, whatever you want to call it. I'm always starting out a little bit too fast just because of that. So it was nice to run with them to pace myself and ease into the race. The course is fairly simple. It's 3 spurs, which in simple terms are loops. We ran a mile into the hub area, which connected to all 3 spurs. Spur 1 was about 3 miles. I think Spur 2 was about 5, and Spur 3 was 1. Mostly trail, other than connecting the start-finish area and leading into Spur 2, it was all trail other than those sections of road. So you had about a quarter mile of road that you would have to deal with to go to and from Spur 2, but everything else was trail. So it was always going to be crushed rock, hard dirt, soft dirt, sand, some roots, grass, real beautiful course, covered by trees, the woods, forest, some areas where it was opened, but you were still surrounded by those trees and woods. The weather was beautiful. It started off cold, at least for me. When the sun came out, it wasn't too bad. I really don't feel like I sweat much at all during that race. So I think that was another advantage for me. At night, it didn't get as cold as it was supposed to, at least again, in my opinion. I know we were moving, we were running, but I was really expecting to have to put on more layers, and I ended up not having to. So overall, the course was beautiful. The weather was beautiful. The aid stations, there were 3 aid stations. So the first one was kind of the bare minimum. Throughout the race, they just had water. At night, they turned into what they called the shot station because they had Jim Beam, Fireball, and Monster, and you could do little shots of those. The second aid station was pretty packed. They didn't have any hot foods, but it was the typical ultra running aid station with the different fluids and different snacks and some sandwiches. The start finish aid station was the best, and I'm sure everyone will agree because they ended up having the hot foods and they had more options. I will say that the 2 cheeseburgers I had, not at the same time, but I did have 2 cheeseburgers from them that were really good, really delicious, and I think really helped lift my spirit when I was kind of feeling down at times. It gave me a little bit of a mental boost to eat something crappy and just feel good about it. But it was real nice too, because the volunteers at that aid station would, because you had to pass that aid station to cross the start finish loop and come back. So they would take your water bottle and fill up whatever you needed, so that by the time you were coming back to start the next loop, you could just grab it and go. You really didn't have to stop at the aid station unless you wanted to. So for that one, I gave it to them just so they could fill up the water bottle. Then when I came back, I'd grab some snacks and go. I really didn't have to spend too much time at the aid stations. So that's the course. Now let's talk about the race. So one of the things I talked about, don't know if I mentioned it on a podcast, I did mention it on social media, that normally I only take 2 days off before a race. This time I took 4. A good friend Joel was asking me to bring that up when I talked about the race, how that worked, how that factored in. Was it a benefit? Was it a negative? I feel like it was a benefit. I felt way more fresh, longer during the race, and I just felt more mentally into it. I didn't feel like, oh God, I'm running again. Like I didn't feel bored. So I think it was a mental and physical advantage to take some extra days off before the race, because in a race like that, it might take a little bit longer to shake out your legs because you haven't run for a few extra days, but it's such a long race that it doesn't really matter. It's not like a 5K, 10K, half or even full marathon where the time makes a huge difference. You have a lot of time to make up. So I think that helped in that aspect. So in the beginning, let's say the first loop, I felt good. I was running my typical start out the race 3 to 4 miles in where I won't stop at all. I'll just run through, and that's where I get my warm up shakeout. And then once that settles in, I start running. Like I'll walk the first minute of the mile and then run through the rest of it. The first loop is always the learning loop. You figure out what's going on the course, what the course layout is like, how your body's going to respond, and then you start saying, okay, these are the areas I'm going to walk, these are the areas I'll run. This is when I might want to refill here or grab what I need from my main hub area just to benefit, because I felt like the first spur was okay. It was kind of long, but it wasn't too bad, knowing, okay, we just hit an aid station, you're going to hit another one in a couple miles, where going from that aid station to aid station 2 was such a big gap that on the second loop, I decided, okay, I'm going to hit my tent, which is in between those, and make sure I get a little extra fluid in me, because I felt like in the first loop, I ran out by the time I got to the second aid station. And then going from aid station 2 to 3, I was out of it again quickly, just because there was so much of a gap between hydration periods. So the first loop, I felt great despite less fluids than I would have liked to have had. Felt okay. I really enjoyed running through the Hall of Pines on loop 2. It's a row of pine trees on both sides, really tall, evenly just planted or placed. I'm not sure if it was naturally done or if somebody did it man-made, but it was really beautiful to run through both ways. It was something I looked forward to during the race. Another thing I looked forward to on that spur was you'd see a sign that said, keep moving, I hear banjos. And that's when I knew, okay, we're about a minute away from the aid station. So that was a nice mental boost to see that sign every time. Spur 3 was interesting because I feel like that was the most technical, a lot of roots. It was a forced single trail, so you couldn't really, you were covered on both sides with trees and shrubs, so you couldn't really dip to the side when runners were coming the opposite direction. Sometimes you just have to stop for a second, let them pass, and then you get back on the trail. There was a sign for this section called Armadillo Alley. That's when I knew, okay, we're walking, because on the first loop, I ran it. It was fine. I noticed where everything was. So on the way back, I was running with my friend Monique and another gentleman that I had met at the Skeeter Scoot 100K the month before, and we were talking. As I was running behind them, I was looking at their feet to see where they were stepping, so I could kind of mimic it, knowing those were safe spots. Somehow, I'm in the middle of talking, and boom, I'm on the ground, and it was one of those falls where the wind was knocked out of you because you make this grunting noise. It was just like like the air is being taken out of you. And I remember, the guy turned around and he was like, hey, you okay? And I looked down, my knee was slightly busted open. I could see that there was a little bit of blood, but the dirt kind of just packed it in, so the blood couldn't really come out. So it was like a mud blood puddle on my knee. per se, I guess. I don't know. I'm trying to give you a visual. But I felt okay. I was like, all right, that hurt. That sucked. I think I was more aggravated of the fact that I now had to spend the next mile or two trying to get the sand and dirt out of my water bottle because I didn't want to drink dirt for the rest of the race. So I was cleaning out the water bottle as I was running, wasting water, just trying to clean my hands and brush all that off. So once I finished that loop, I now knew, okay, here's what's going on. Now we're set. Now we know the sweet spots we can run, where we should walk, or we definitely need to walk. And I was set in. I was moving at a great pace. Everything was looking well. I feel like I really could fast forward all the way to the 50s. Because really I felt like probably the only thing that changed from mile 10 to mile 50 was somewhere in the 20s. I did feel a little bit of negativity. I don't know if it was just the knee was annoying or the dirt was annoying me. I think it was that because the water bottle was clean, but I would still take sips and there was sand in my mouth and I could feel it crunching in my teeth and it was really annoying. So I think that might have just been the negative part, was like, this sucks. Like, I don't want to do this. But it lasted so quick. Like it was so short of a negative period that I was okay. I knew this is a low that I'm not going to have to grind for too long. I dealt with it and it was gone. But it was at that point I also realized I started to hate spur 2. And I remember talking with my friend Monique and we're like, yeah, I really hated that spur. It was so long. And the only thing I could do was really break it up into what I considered 4 sections. The little section of road, the Hall of Pines portion of the trail, a section that led along the roadside, and then my favorite part, which was the last part that led to Aid Station 2. And then it was like, once I hit that, I was like, okay, because now you're going back. You got to do it again, but now at least we're going back and we're going to be out of it for a while. Spur 1 was iffy. Sometimes I liked it, sometimes I didn't. Spur 3 I didn't mind really because it just was so short, and after my fall I was careful the rest of the way, so I really liked it. So just going through those loops, counting down the miles, everything felt good. My nutrition was good. I was eating just little cuts of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich that they would have at the aid station and some peanut butter pretzels. That was really it. I was eating those 2 things off and on, consuming a mixture of the water they had, the Tailwind, and then I was trying this product, Liquid IV, which was working really good. And then of course, I gotta have my Coke Zero. So I definitely had Coke Zero on every loop. But I think that was another benefit, the fact that I wasn't having it every 2.5 miles and doing it more like every 10 miles. That was also a benefit because I didn't feel as bloated as I sometimes do, and I feel like the less sodium helped with bloating. So yeah, let's kind of fast forward to, I get to mile 51 and I'm at 11.5 miles and I'm starting to think, man, it's possible to run a sub 24 right now, the way I'm feeling. I knew it wasn't going to stay that way forever, but I was telling myself like, hey, like you're running really well right now. You're positive. You feel great. Let's keep the momentum up as long as we can and see what happens. Because my main goal going into this race was to go sub 30. This is a Western States qualifier, one of the biggest, if not the biggest 100 milers. And to me, to say I qualified for that was really all I wanted. To me, that was going to be special. And I've run sub 30 twice, so I knew it's possible. But it's just, it's a new course. It's different distance because it was 102 miles. So it was slightly long. So I had to factor that in as well. So, I'm thinking, okay, I want to go sub 30. Even better if I can get a PR. Amazing if I could go sub 24. But really, again, it was just go sub 30. And if we get a PR, even better. Don't stress the sub 24. And I think that helped because for a while there, I was stressing that and wanting it as it got closer. And once I let that go, I think I was able to enjoy the race a little bit more because it was less pressure that I was putting on myself, less stress that I was causing on my body. So it's starting to get dark, and I'm remembering the headlamps weren't working. I was assuming it was the batteries. So I asked my friend Monique, hey, do you have any extra batteries? She said, yeah. Her crew, Celine, she was at the tent area. They were camped right next to me. And she said, yeah, just tell her you need the batteries. So I get there and she can't find the batteries. And I'm like, oh God, like I'm wasting time here. So she pulls out a headlamp. It turns on. So she goes, here, these batteries work. So I just take the batteries, I put them in my headlamp, and I start the 3rd spur. Thank God I decided to check, because I'm halfway into the spur and I'm like, oh no, this thing isn't turning on either. I'm like, it can't be the batteries now, because these are new batteries that just worked in hers and they're not working in mine. I was making sure I wasn't putting them in wrong. I just started freaking out, because now I'm like, I still got half this race to go. Majority is going to be in the dark. I don't want to carry my phone as a flashlight. I don't even think it's going to be efficient enough. So I get back in and she's standing at the edge of the spur, and I was like, here, these don't work either. I was like, if you can find those batteries, please let me know. If not, when I come back, I'll just get my phone. So I get to the aid station, and one of the volunteers says, hey, don't forget your headlamp. And I was like, I have two of them and none of them work. And this lovely volunteer, Amanda, who was standing right there, was like, here, take mine. And I felt bad. I was like, but don't you need it? She's like, no, I'm here, take it. I put on her headlamp and I start the next loop. I get out, I was on my way back from that spur, the first spur, and I hear Phil, and it's Monique, and she has my headlamp. Somehow her and Celine were able to get it working, and I was grateful, because as grateful as I was for Amanda's headlamp, hers wasn't as strong as mine. So during that first spur that I was using hers, I was stumbling on some of the dips, because the perception, the light and the shadows just were deceiving, and I was like, this is going to be kind of miserable. I'm going to have to slow down because I can't see as good as I want. So once Monique gave me mine, it was a world of a difference. I came back, I was like, here, give this to Amanda at the aid station. It's time to rock and roll and keep pushing. So for, those next few miles, I was back into my run walk mode. I was feeling great. And it was the first time as the night was approaching that I felt positive. Normally that's when I start getting down, because everybody gets quiet, the mood drops, you start to see more walking and less running. One thing that really, really aggravates me is these people with the really bright headlamps that look up and blind you. It's like, you don't need to look up. Like, if you have to look up, your eyes can look up. You don't have to tilt your head up. So there was a lot of times, and I heard other people saying it too, or I would even see them doing like me, where you had to put your hands in front of your face, almost like if you're driving and someone puts their bright lights on. It was just like, it was frustrating, because now you're blinded temporarily by someone else's headlamp, and then you're trying to find your footing on the trail. So I definitely would walk those sections just until I got my vision fully back and could see, because I didn't want to fall and hurt myself or do any damage. So pushing through the night, feeling great. I kept telling myself, I'm like, man, this is the longest you've felt so great and felt positive. There really hasn't been a grind. I kept waiting for it. I was joking, like when's the grind gonna come? Like, I'm ready for it, because I've been in such a positive, upbeat mind state that I just don't know if it's gonna happen or not. And that was good, because the longer I could stay in that mode, I knew that when it did come, I could be a little bit more prepared for it, but it wouldn't suck as much. So I'm finishing that loop and getting ready to start mile 61, and I was like, you know what, it's getting late. Let me call my wife and just check in with her, and just check in with everybody on social media, because another thing for me at least with 100 milers is I feel like you get so distant from the world that when you do reconnect on social media, it's like, man, so much happened while I was gone. So I like to check sports scores, which once again my Buffalo Sabres lost, whatever. But it was cool to just go on Facebook Live for a few minutes, and anyone who watched it saw how bad the internet was, because it just kept going in and out. I talked to my wife a little bit and just was letting her know how good I felt, and to hear my son's voice in the background was a positive lift for me, because I really missed them, and his voice just brought a smile to my face. And I remember what really stunk was during the night when it did, I put the phone away and I started grinding again into the 60s, and I wanted really badly to bring my phone with me, because there was this, I don't know how to say it, but I wanted to keep myself somewhat entertained whenever that grind and the negativity came. I wanted to just, because I knew it was going to be a lot of walking, so I wanted to be prepared for that. But because the internet was so terrible, I knew it was pointless because it was just, if I tried to watch something, it was going to constantly be buffering, or I just wouldn't even be able to get the service at all. And I really didn't want to listen to music because I like to hear what's going on around me in those races, and especially at night, because you were in the pitch black darkness of the woods. I had heard stories that people had already seen a rattlesnake out on the course. You know, you heard some rustling in the bushes, in the trees and everything. And it was funny. One of the runners behind me was like, "Oh, don't worry, it's someone going to the bathroom." And I'm like, No. I see a little, I see a body with a tail running through those bushes right there. That's not a person going to the bathroom. You know, so it's like things like that where you start getting a little nervous and you're like, all right, for me, I didn't want music on. I know some people might use it as a distraction so they don't hear those things and freak out, but for me, I want to hear those things. I want to know what's going on around me. And also just to interact with the other runners, because for me, that was more uplifting, is just to pass runners during the night and just keep those words of encouragement, the jokes, the cooperative cussing of the trail and the race itself, the things that make ultras fun. So fast forward to, I'm coming up to mile 71. I remember seeing Monique, and I know she was dealing with an Achilles issue, and she was struggling throughout the race. She had said to me, I think I'm going to drop when I finish this loop. And she was only 2.5 miles behind me. So it's like, you're almost 75% done. Like, you got 13 hours. Take a break, walk it out. Like, you got plenty of time to finish this thing. And I remember going, passing the hub before I started that third spur, and I said to Celine, I'm like, Monique's talking about quitting, shut it down. Like, here's what to tell her. We're not going to let her quit. And that's when, for me, my body shut down. I finished that loop and I knew, we're at mile 71. We're getting close, but now I was tired. There was really, my feet felt fine. I think I had one minor blister at that point. I wasn't cramping. Mentally, I still felt good, but my body, it just started to hurt to run. And my breathing wasn't even feeling that good. Like, I could only go about 15, 20 seconds, and I just felt like my heart rate was starting to jump and my lungs just felt kind of compressed. So into the 70s, that's when I knew the grind was coming. It's now dark, most miserable part of the race for me, and I was forced to a walk, but I kept reminding myself, hey, you walked 30-something miles at Wildcat. You walked 40 at the Keys 100. You've done this before. Hell, because of the conditions at Skydive 100, I probably walked 60. Oh, no, not 60. Let me say 50. I probably walked half of that 100-miler. So I've been in that state before and I've dealt with it. So I knew I could do this one too, because it was a shorter period. It wasn't so long that I was going to have to walk this time. And the walking pace was still so good that I was like, okay, let's do what we got to do, convince ourselves to stay positive. At this point, we're not running the mile we're in, we're walking the mile we're in. But, it was like, hey, just keep counting these miles down, stay in these miles, focus on the little parts of the trail. And, if we ever get those legs back, we'll run again. So at that point, it was more of a keep taking aspirin for the pain that I was starting to feel in my knees. At that point, I was back to using the PR lotion, which was helping. And it was just, just push, just walk, do what you got to do, focus, and don't let yourself get distracted. Don't bring yourself down. Don't eliminate yourself. So, I get to mile 81 and now I'm falling asleep. I had started trying to take caffeine pills, stay awake pills. They don't work for me for whatever reason. Energy drinks, I was taking some of the Monster at the shot station, wasn't working. So I'm entering the 80s and the grind is starting to get real, like really real. The grind is beating at me mentally. Physically, I'm still feeling okay, but now I'm as Lucian says, I feel like I'm walking drunk. I can't keep my balance. I'm falling asleep. I would close my eyes and see how many steps I could take, see if I could sleep, but then I'd almost fall on something or notice I was leading into the bushes or thankfully not into any of the ditches. So I told myself as I was finishing the first spur of that loop, I said, when I get back to the hub, I'm going to go in my tent and I'm going to try to sleep for 20, 25 minutes at most. I laid down, but it was like the pain started kicking in because now your adrenaline's dropping, your body's getting cold because the temperature was starting to drop, and I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing people around me. I remember at one point, I started to doze off and I hear in a short distance in the woods, and it would echo, but I hear, "Ooh, hurry. And I'm like, damn it, I just started falling asleep in this son of... So the funnier thing about that was it made me laugh. As annoyed as I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to get some sleep. It made me want to get back out there because hearing Lucien and hearing everybody else just continue to joke about the negativity and the pain made me want to get back out there and keep grinding. I didn't want, what do they call it? FOMO, fear of missing out. I didn't want to miss out on this opportunity because I was still in a good mood. I just was tired. I needed some sleep. So somehow I got like a mini version of a 15-minute nap. I got up and said, all right, let's just keep going. Because I had my feet elevated during those 15 minutes, I somehow cut off circulation from the knees down. So when I got up, it was tough because the first quarter mile, I was just trying to get the feeling back. It was that annoying, painfully tingly feeling shooting from my knees down to my toes. But once I got, and the other thing too is I tightened up. So I was walking like a tin man without oil and just like a robot. But once I loosened up and I got the feeling back below the knee, I was able to get back to my walking pace. I felt better. I felt, not awake, but at least more alert and more stable in my balance. So, I get through that and now I'm getting into the 90s and now you're feeling good because you're like, man, we're 10 miles away. And around, I want to say the 70s, there was a rumor going around. I heard it first from somebody telling one of her runners. It was a crew telling a runner, hey, good news. You don't have to run spur 3 because the course is already long. They're not going to make us run 103. They're going to leave it at 102. That was something that was nice. Just keeping that in mind, because even though spur 3 wasn't that bad for me, just knowing, okay, there's 1 mile that they're going to eliminate that you don't have to do now. So doing my math in my head was also nice because I didn't have to factor that in. And it was at that point, I knew I definitely wasn't going sub 24. So it was okay. It was like, look, if we just stick to this pace that we're at right now, we're now going to PR. We know we're definitely making Western States, or I shouldn't say making, we're qualifying for it. And we're on pace for a PR. So we're getting 2 out of the 3 goals. There's nothing to be negative or beat yourself up about. Let's enjoy this. Let's see what we can do. And it was around that time that the sun started coming up too. So that was nice. That brings new life. The sunrise was beautiful, just coming over the trees, and the temperature never really got too hot. You could hear the birds chirping. I remember on spur 2, there were 2 owls, one on each side of the trail, and they were hooting at each other. And I remember just looking at them, and I started hooting at them too, like, hey, can I join in? Just at that point, the grind was out and it was back to a medium high. Like I wasn't running. I wasn't feeling amazing. The pain was there. The fatigue was there, but I wasn't negative. I wasn't beating myself up anymore. So it was a little more fun again. It wasn't as miserable and frustrating. So I remember hitting the first aid station, thanking the volunteers there, and they were like, hey, don't forget, you don't have to do spur 3. And I remember I just threw my hand up like in a way of acknowledgement, and she started laughing because it's almost like at that point you're almost out of words and you're just like you're starting to do hand gestures to communicate to people. Fast forward to coming down the last quarter mile stretch of the road, the emotions kicked in. I mean, when I realized you're getting a huge PR, I mean, it was an hour and 53-minute PR that I ended up getting. I think about the PR. I was thinking about qualifying for Western States. I was thinking about how I hadn't seen my son for almost 3 days. Like I really missed him. I wanted to get home and see him. There were some blisters that had formed at that point, which is another funny story because it was somewhere in the 80s, I want to say, where I took a step and on my right foot between my big toe and my second toe, I just felt like a bubble. And I started trying to visualize what just happened in my foot. And I didn't know if a blister had just expanded and had been created, or if one was there, I didn't realize it, and it had just popped. Like I had no idea what just happened in my foot, but now I could feel it. So I was feeling the blisters. I was feeling the fatigue. There was a picture of me that somebody took that I had posted on social media of me at mile 93. And if you look at my face, I was dead tired. Like just not like, again, not really energy, because I was still pushing a great walking pace in a shuffle, but my face, you could see it. I had 15 minutes of sleep since the beginning of the race. I was tired. I needed some sleep. I needed some rest. So I'm coming up to the main hub area where the start finish line is, and everyone just starts cheering. Somebody screams, "We got a finisher!" And I mean, I was fighting the tears. I'm kind of starting to get choked up now just thinking about it. Bad. Like the emotions that you feel when you accomplish something like that and you push yourself for so long, for so hard. Oh man, I didn't expect this when I started recording this or writing this down. It's just not only is it emotional to you, but to those that witnessed it, because somebody had posted something on Facebook the other night about my finish, and they're like, I don't know if anybody saw what I saw, but wow, you were in the moment. You know, it was just that little bit of extra encouragement and just the celebration that went on and took place as I was coming up. And it was funny because through the whole race, a lot of people, you know, who didn't know me, and there's no name on the bib, they were calling me Hoka. They just, you know, because I had the Hoka singlet on, the Hoka shorts, the Hoka shoes. So the whole day, everybody that didn't know me referred to me as Hoka. And the DJ that they had at the start-finish area that was playing music and had lights going on and even a smoke machine at that point, he was like, you know, way to go, Hoka, way to go, Mr. Hoka. You know, it was just a overwhelmingly emotional experience and accomplishment. I just, it's the thing I love about it is you know going into this, there's going to be some awesome moments, there's going to be some painful moments, there's going to be miserable moments, there's going to be times you're going to want to quit, which I think that's another thing I really loved was about the experience with this race. I never wanted to quit. Even when I was falling asleep or trying to fall asleep in my tent and the pain was kicking in from just settling down, I didn't feel like quitting. I never wanted to quit. Normally I have one of those moments, but for this time I didn't. And it was really, really nice to experience that. And just kind of to recap everything, I mean, it was nice that I never chafed. Despite not being able to use the sports shield that I put on to prevent it, I never chafed. And I think that contributes just to the fact that it wasn't that hot and I never really sweat. You know, I kept on the same clothes the whole time, the same shoes, the same socks. The only thing I really changed was just when it was cold, I'd put on the beanie, the gloves, the arm warmers, and during the night I put on the jacket because it did get a little bit cool. You know, I didn't really take, other than the 15 minutes where I sat down to rest, or maybe just the times where I'd put on some of the PR lotion or stop to take some sleeping pills, or not sleeping pills, stay awake pills, and get some hydration at the hub and things like that. I didn't really stop. Like, I was always in motion and I felt good. I was on my feet, never felt weak. I always felt strong in my stride. You know, it was the most positive that I've felt in a 100-miler, physically and mentally. It was just really nice. And throughout the race, just seeing, you know, one person I really want to shout out is my friend that I met at the last Wildcat through Lucian, Pam. I mean, she had tried so many times at different races, and just to watch her grind every time, there were times she didn't even see me and I didn't say anything because I could just see her in the moment and I didn't want to take her out of whatever zone she was in. I saw it in her face, in her eyes, and I would just pass her, and in my mind I was kind of encouraging her instead of saying it out loud. And I saw her on my last loop knowing she still had one more after she had finished that one, and I could hear it in her voice. She's like, I'm trying, I'm grinding, I'm trying. And to see that she finished, even that's starting to get me emotional, because it was like, finally, I've done it. You know, I know what that feels like. So for her to accomplish that and experience that was really, really awesome. To see Monique continue to push through even after wanting to quit, to see her just coming up with every little concoction she could to try to take the pain away from her Achilles, having friends work on her leg and on her ankle, on her feet, and just to see her keep pushing and come out with the finish and a sub-30 finish. You know, that was awesome. To see Lucian, my God, the man who I thought he had dropped in the beginning of the race because I didn't see him after a while. after the first 2 loops, I was like, I haven't seen this guy for like 3-4 hours. Where is he? He took an early nap. He was tired. He went to sleep. And for him, that benefited him because, I mean, he was out there grinding during the night while most people were walking. He was running. And he ended up with a sub-30 finish. So, shout out to Lucian, who, by the way, I want to give a shout out to his glasses. He had, I remember in the night, it was probably somewhere in the 70s or 80s, mile-wise. And I just see this, weird green glow coming towards me. And it wasn't his headlamp because he had, I think he had something either on his hand, on his wrist. He had like maybe handheld light. And as it got closer, I'm like, those are glasses. So it was like the rim of the glasses were a light green. And as it gets closer, I'm like, it's freaking Lucian. It was like, this guy is always entertaining us, no matter if he tries or not. It was just, that was something that made me laugh. And, it's the little goofy, weird, odd things that would make other people look at you like something's wrong with you. But it's you do what you got to do when you're in these 100-milers just to have fun. Because that's the one thing I kept telling myself, dude, have fun. You're doing great. Definitely a shout out to Jared, again, with another strong finish. It was nice getting to run with him a couple times during the race, and just his encouragement. I think the funny moment with him was every time I would be passing him during a loop as we were coming, going the opposite directions. If he was near somebody, he would yell out, "Oh, there he is. He's a celebrity. He's famous. He's got a podcast." So, that was funny. It was like the ultra running community is just great. The volunteers at the aid stations who'd make jokes to make you laugh, the different runners that would encourage you. There was one guy out there that I saw who was encouraging everybody every single time. I don't know how this guy didn't lose his voice because it wasn't just mumble encouragement. This guy would yell for most of the time. But even this race, 173 people started and only 101 finished. It just goes to show you how tough not only this course, but just in general 100-milers are. Like, people sign up for these things, and some of the people that drop have finished them before. So it's not like just newbies going into this. Some of them were, but most of them weren't. Sometimes things just don't go your way, and for myself and those that I saw pushing through, some of them cramped over to their side and doing everything they can to keep themselves balanced. I tell you what, man, if you could ever, obviously you got to have the want and the will to do it, but if you ever find yourself willing to try a 100-miler, I say go for it. Obviously work yourself up to it first, work your way up, don't just jump right into it. But what an experience, man. Even if you only do one, I'm telling you, you'll walk away experiencing something you've never experienced before. Yes, physically for sure, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. In those aspects of your life, you will just enjoy something you've never known to be possible. So with that said, for anyone who has listened to the first 2 episodes, I promise this one is the only one that's going to be this long. My goal is to always keep them 15 to 20 minutes, but there's just, again, so much to talk about in this race. So hopefully you guys stuck with me through this whole podcast, even if it takes splitting it up into a few different times of listening to it to get through the whole thing. If you got to this point, I truly appreciate you listening to this and sticking with me, and I really hope you'll continue to follow with me in this journey and share it with your friends, your family, your social media. Again, just keep running the mile you're in, stay positive, keep it fun. We'll see you next week.